I should have felt triumph as I read the verdict that Tuesday afternoon. After 18 months of investigation, 6 weeks of testimony, and 3 days of deliberation, the jury had finally reached a decision in The People versus Dante Moretti. But instead, sitting in my chambers overlooking downtown Chicago, all I felt was exhaustion and the persistent sense that I had missed something crucial. Judge Simone Crawford. That was me. 31 years old, youngest federal judge appointed to the Northern District of Illinois in 20 years. First black woman to hold the position. My grandmother had cried when I told her about the appointment. My mother had posted about it on Facebook 47 times. My father, who had died when I was 12, would have been proud. I had worked for this moment my entire adult life. Harvard Law, prestigious clerkships, years as a prosecutor, building airtight cases against the city's most dangerous criminals. I had sacrificed relationships, sleep, and any semblance of a personal life to sit in this office, wearing these robes, wielding this authority. And yet, as I looked at the file marked Moretti, Dante Michael, all I could think about was the way he had watched me throughout the trial, not with the fear or respect most defendants showed, not with the contempt or hostility I had seen in other criminals' eyes. No, Dante Moretti had watched me with something that looked disturbingly like interest. Judge Crawford? My clerk, Melissa, knocked softly on the door. They're ready for you in courtroom 6. I smoothed my robes and checked my reflection in the small mirror behind my desk. Professional, composed, authoritative. No one looking at me would guess that I had slept only 3 hours the night before, or that my hands were shaking slightly as I gathered the verdict documents. The courtroom was packed, as it had been every day of the trial. Media filled the back rows, cameras disabled per my order but notebooks at the ready. Federal prosecutors sat at their table, confident and eager. Defense attorneys looked resigned but professional. And there, at the defendant's table, sat Dante Moretti himself. He was not conventionally handsome in the way of movie stars or models. His face was too angular, his features too sharp, his presence too overwhelming, but there was something magnetic about him, something that drew the eye and held it. Dark hair, perfectly styled. Custom suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Hands folded calmly on the table in front of him. No nervous movements, no tells. But it was his eyes that always caught me. Deep brown, almost black, capable of shifting from cold calculation to unexpected warmth in the space of a heartbeat. Those eyes found mine as I entered the courtroom, and for just a moment, everything else faded. The murmuring crowd, the clicking pens, the rustling papers, all of it disappeared into a silence that felt weighted with meaning. Then the moment passed, and I was Judge Crawford again, ascending to the bench while the bailiff called the court to order. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" I asked, my voice steady and clear. "We have, Your Honor." The jury foreman stood, an older white man who had been meticulous in his attention throughout the trial. "The defendant will rise." Dante stood, his movements fluid and controlled. His lead attorney, a shark named Marcus Weinberg, who charged $800 an hour, stood beside him. Neither man looked particularly worried, which should have been my first warning. "On the charge of racketeering, how do you find?" "Not guilty." The courtroom erupted. Prosecutors shot to their feet, faces flushed with anger. Media reps scrambled for their phones. Dante's attorneys exchanged subtle, satisfied glances, but Dante himself simply continued to watch me, his expression unreadable. "On the charge of money laundering, how do you find?" "Not guilty." More outrage. From the prosecution table, the lead prosecutor, James Harrison, looked like he might have a stroke. "On the charge of obstruction of justice, how do you find?" "Not guilty." I continued through the remaining charges, each verdict the same. "Not guilty. Not guilty. Not guilty." When it was finished, I thanked the jury for their service, set Dante's bond conditions, and adjourned the court. Professional, proper, exactly as I should have done. But as the courtroom emptied and Dante was led out by his security team, he turned back for just a moment. Our eyes met across the now empty space, and he smiled. Not a smirk of victory or a grin of triumph, just a smile that said, very clearly, "I'll be seeing you again." 3 days later, the prosecution filed an appeal based on procedural errors. 2 weeks after that, the appeals were denied. Dante Moretti was officially a free man. I told myself I was glad to have the case behind me. I told myself that the justice system had worked as designed, that reasonable doubt was reasonable doubt, that my job was to ensure a fair trial, not to guarantee convictions. I told myself a lot of things that weren't quite true. The truth was that Dante Moretti haunted my thoughts in ways that were entirely inappropriate for a federal judge. I found myself wondering about the life he led, the empire he commanded, the man behind the carefully constructed facade. I reminded myself that I had seen the evidence, the wire transfers, the suspicious meetings, the witnesses who swore he ran a criminal organization that spanned 3 states. The jury might have found reasonable doubt, but I knew what I knew. Dante Moretti was dangerous. He was a criminal. He represented everything I had dedicated my career to fighting against. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about the way he had looked at me in that courtroom. Chapter 2. The Attack. The attack came on a rainy Tuesday evening, 3 months after the verdict. I was leaving the 40 courthouse later than usual, around 8:30, having stayed to finish reviewing briefs for an upcoming case. The parking garage was nearly empty, my footsteps echoing off the concrete in a rhythm that should have been comforting in its familiarity, but instead felt ominous. I had my keys in my hand, phone in my pocket, pepper spray attached to my bag. All the precautions a woman takes when walking alone at night in a city. They weren't enough. The first man came from behind a concrete pillar, his face covered with a ski mask. The second appeared from the other side, blocking my path to the car. I reached for the pepper spray, but a third man grabbed my wrist, twisting it hard enough to make me drop my bag. "Judge Crawford," the first man said, his voice muffled by the mask. "You made a very poor decision 3 months ago. Let me go." I tried to keep my voice steady, tried to sound authoritative despite the fear coursing through my veins. "You're assaulting a federal judge. The consequences are that you let Dante Moretti walk free," he interrupted. "And now you're going to pay for that mistake." The second man stepped closer, and I saw the knife in his hand, the blade catching the fluorescent light. I should have stayed calm, should have talked my way out of it, used my legal training, my authority, my words as weapons. But when he raised that knife, something primal kicked in. I screamed. The sound echoed through the parking garage, bouncing off the walls, amplifying into something that hurt my own ears. I kicked out, connected with someone's shin, heard a grunt of pain, twisted away from the hand holding my wrist, felt fabric tear as my suit jacket caught on something sharp. Then I was running, heels clicking on concrete, breath burning in my lungs, running toward the exit, toward the street, toward anything that wasn't this. I made it maybe 20 feet before they caught me. The tackle came from behind, knocking the wind from my lungs as I hit the ground hard. My head cracked against the concrete, and stars exploded across my vision. Blood, warm and metallic, filled my mouth where I had bitten my tongue. "Hold her down." Hands grabbed my arms, my legs, pinning me to the cold ground. The man with the knife knelt beside me, the blade pressed against my throat hard enough that I could feel my pulse beating against it. "This is a message," he said, his breath hot and rank against my face. "Tell Dante Moretti that his freedom came at a price. Tell him that Judge Crawford paid it." The knife moved, and I felt the sharp sting as it cut across my cheekbone. Not deep, not life-threatening, but enough to hurt, enough to scar, enough to mark me permanently. I heard myself whimper, hated the sound, hated my helplessness, hated everything about this moment. Then suddenly, the weight was gone. The hands released me. I heard shouting, sounds of a struggle, someone cursing violently in Italian. I rolled onto my side, trying to get up, trying to see what was happening. My vision was blurry, head spinning from hitting the concrete, but I made out shapes moving in the dim light. Fighting, someone hitting someone else with brutal efficiency. Then a face appeared in front of mine. Dark eyes, familiar eyes. "Don't move," Dante Moretti said, his voice tight with an emotion I couldn't name. "You're bleeding. Just stay still." His hands, surprisingly gentle, touched my face, checking the cut on my cheek. I should have pulled away, should have demanded to know what he was doing there, how he knew, why he was helping. Instead, I just stared at him, too shocked to speak, too hurt to process what was happening. "Marco, call Dr. Alessio. Tell him I'm bringing her to the estate. Enzo, make sure none of those bastards leave this garage breathing." His words were crisp, commanding, terrifying in their implications. "I need a hospital," I managed to say, my voice coming out weaker than I intended. "You need somewhere safe." He slid one arm under my knees, the other behind my back, lifting me as if I weighed nothing. "The hospital will ask questions you don't want to answer right now. My doctor is discreet. I'm a federal judge. I can't." You're a bleeding woman who was just attacked by men who wanted to send me a message using your body as the medium." His voice was hard now, angry in a way that made something in my chest tighten. "Right now, you're not Judge Crawford. You're someone who needs help, and I'm the one offering it." I wanted to argue, wanted to insist on protocol, on proper procedure, on all the rules and regulations that governed my life. But my head was pounding, my cheek was on fire, and Dante Moretti's arms felt steady and safe, in a way that nothing else did at that moment. So I let him carry me to a black SUV with tinted windows. Let him settle me in the back seat while someone I assumed was Marco drove. Let my consciousness fade in and out as we moved, through the city toward whatever came next. The last thing I remember before everything went dark was Dante's voice, low and deadly, speaking in rapid Italian to whoever was on the other end of his phone. I didn't understand most of the words, but I understood the tone. Someone was going to pay for what happened to me tonight. And somehow, that thought was more comforting than it should have been. Chapter 3. The estate. I woke up in a room that was nothing like any hospital I had ever seen. The bed was massive, with sheets that felt like clouds against my skin. Soft morning light filtered through heavy curtains, creating patterns on the ceiling that I watched for several minutes before my brain caught up with my surroundings. Where was I? What had happened? Why did my face hurt so much? Then it all came flooding back. The parking garage, the attack, the knife, Dante Moretti lifting me like I weighed nothing and promising me safety. I sat up too quickly, and the room spun. My hand went automatically to my cheek, finding bandages and the sharp sting of antiseptic. Someone had cleaned and dressed my wound. Someone had also changed my clothes, putting me in soft pajamas that definitely weren't mine. "I wouldn't recommend moving too quickly." The voice came from a chair by the window, where a woman in her mid-30s sat with a medical bag at her feet. "You have a mild concussion, and the pain medication is still wearing off." "Who are you?" My voice came out raspy, throat dry. "Dr. Sophia Alessio. Dante called me last night to treat your injuries." She stood and moved to the bedside with practiced efficiency. "Let me check your pupils." I submitted to the examination, too disoriented to argue. She checked my eyes, my reflexes, asked me questions about my name, the date, where I was. I answered automatically, judge training kicking in even through the fog in my head. "The cut on your cheek required 8 stitches, Dr. Alessio said, her tone professional but not unkind. "I did my best to minimize scarring, but you'll probably want to see a plastic surgeon in a few months for a follow-up. Your other injuries are minor bruising on your arms and legs, nothing broken." "How long have I been here?" "About 10 hours. It's 7 in the morning. You've been asleep since we finished treating you around 9 last night. 10 hours in Dante Moretti's home. 10 hours unconscious and vulnerable in the house of a man I had presided over in court. 10 hours that could destroy my career if anyone found out. I need to leave." I started to get out of bed, but Dr. Alessio's hand on my shoulder stopped me. "Dante expected you would say that. He asked me to tell you that your car was brought here from the parking garage, your phone is charging on the nightstand, and he would very much appreciate it if you would have breakfast with him before you make any decisions about leaving." Breakfast. I almost laughed at the absurdity. I was attacked last night by men who mentioned his name specifically, men who cut my face as a message to him. And he wants to have breakfast? He wants to explain, Dr. Alessio said quietly, and to apologize. "Dante blames himself for what happened to you. He should. Those men came after me because of him. Yes, and he will spend the rest of his life making sure nothing like that ever happens again." There was something in her tone, something that made me look at her more closely. Not just a hired doctor. Someone who knew Dante well enough to speak with certainty about his intentions. "I'm not staying here," I said firmly. "I appreciate the medical care, but I need to report this attack to the police, to my security detail, to the people who failed to protect you in the first place." Dante's voice came from the doorway. I hadn't heard him enter, but suddenly he was there, filling the space with his presence. The people who let 3 armed men get within striking distance of a federal judge in a supposedly secure parking garage. He was dressed differently than I had ever seen him. No expensive suit, no courtroom armor, just dark jeans and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle. His hair was slightly messy, as if he had been running his hands through it. He looked tired and angry, and something else I couldn't quite name. "Thank you, Sophia," he said, not taking his eyes off me. "I'll take it from here." Dr. Alessio nodded and gathered her things. She paused at the door to look back at me. The pain medication is on the nightstand. Take it with food. And Judge Crawford, she hesitated, then continued. You're safe here. Dante has made certain of it. Then she was gone. And I was alone with Dante Moretti in a bedroom that suddenly felt far too intimate. How are you feeling? He asked, moving slowly into the room as if approaching a skittish animal. Like I was attacked and kidnapped in the presided, same night. You weren't kidnapped. You were rescued. Against my will. You were unconscious. You couldn't express your will. He pulled up the chair. Dr. Alessio had vacated and sat, maintaining careful distance. But you're conscious now, and you're free to leave whenever you choose. Your car keys are on the dresser. Your phone is fully charged, and there's a gate code written on a card next to your keys. I hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected him to make it so easy. However, he continued, before you go, I would very much appreciate it if you would let me explain what happened last night and what I'm prepared to do about it. The men who attacked me mentioned you specifically. They said I paid the price for letting you walk free. My hand went to the bandage on my cheek. What explanation could possibly justify this? No explanation justifies it. His voice was hard, cold in a way that made me remember he wasn't just a man sitting across from me. He was Dante Moretti, the man prosecutors had called the most dangerous criminal in Chicago. But there is context that you deserve to know. Then talk. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. 3 months ago, you presided over my trial. You were fair, impartial, exactly what a judge should be. The prosecution built their case on testimony from men in my organization who had turned informant. What they didn't tell you was that those men were working for a rival family, the Volkov organization, trying to take over my territory. That sounds like an excuse. It's a fact. When I was acquitted, the Volkovs lost their leverage. They couldn't destroy me through legal means, so they decided to send a message through someone they saw as responsible for my freedom. His jaw tightened. They chose you. How did you know I was being attacked? I've had people watching you since the trial ended. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implications I didn't want to examine. You've been stalking me? I've been protecting you. He met my eyes steadily. I knew that my acquittal might make you a target. I knew that the Volkovs play dirty. So I assigned a security team to monitor your movements, to make sure you stayed safe. That's completely necessary, as last night proved. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at grounds I couldn't see. My team was following your car when they saw the men waiting in the parking garage. They called me immediately, and I came myself to make sure you weren't hurt. I wasn't fast enough. The pain in his voice was unexpected, real. This wasn't performance or manipulation. Dante Moretti genuinely felt responsible for what had happened to me. Why do you care? I asked quietly. I'm just the judge who presided over your trial. We don't know each other. He turned back to me, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. Don't we? No, we don't. I sat in your courtroom for 6 weeks. Judge Crawford. I watched you every day. I saw how you listened to testimony, how you considered evidence, how you ruled on objections. I saw your integrity, your intelligence, your absolute commitment to fairness. I saw you. He took a step closer. And I think, perhaps, you saw me too. I saw a defendant, I said, but my voice wasn't as steady as I wanted it to be. You saw a man. He was right. God help me. He was right. Throughout that trial, I had seen Dante Moretti, not just as the defendant at the table, but as a person. Complex, intelligent, magnetic, in ways that had nothing to do with his alleged crimes. It doesn't matter what I saw or didn't see, I said firmly. I'm a federal judge, and you're a man who wants to keep you safe. He moved closer still, stopping just at the edge of appropriate distance. A man who is asking you to stay here, in this house, under my protection, until the threat against you has been eliminated. That's impossible. Why? Because I have a life, a career. I can't just disappear into your compound and let you play bodyguard. I have cases to hear, judgments to write, a whole life that doesn't stop because 3 thugs attacked me. Your life nearly ended last night. His voice was quiet but intense. If my team had been 30 seconds later, if those men had decided to kill you instead of just mark you, you would be dead right now. Is your career worth your life? Is your protection worth my reputation? My position? Everything I've worked for? I stood up too quickly, and the room tilted. Dante's hands caught my elbows, steadying me, his touch warm through the thin pajama fabric. Your position won't matter if you're dead, Simone. It was the first time he had used my first name. The intimacy of it, combined with the genuine fear in his voice, made something crack in my carefully maintained composure. How long? I asked. How long would I need to stay? Until I've dealt with the Volkovs. A few weeks. Maybe a month. A month. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I can't take a month off. The chief judge would have questions. The media would. The media thinks you were mugged near your home, that you're taking medical leave to recover from a minor injury and the emotional trauma. He released my arms but didn't step back. Your clerk has already been informed. Your cases have been reassigned. Everything has been handled. You had no right. I had every right. You were attacked because of me, and I won't allow it to happen again. We stood there, barely a foot apart, the morning light catching in his dark eyes. I should have been angry, should have demanded to leave immediately. Consequences be damned. Instead, I heard myself ask, what would staying here entail? Safety, comfort, time to heal. His hand came up, fingers barely grazing the bandage on my cheek, and the opportunity to get to know each other beyond the roles we played in that courtroom. This is crazy. Yes, I don't even like you. I don't believe that. He smiled, and it transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. But we have time for you to figure out how you actually feel. And if I leave right now, then I'll have my team continue to watch you from a distance. But Simone, they won't be able to protect you the way I can. Not completely. Not when the Volkovs have already proven they can get to you in a supposedly secure location. He was right. I hated that he was right. But denying it would be foolish. Those men had gotten past courthouse security, past the parking garage barriers, past every defense that was supposed to keep me safe. If Dante's people hadn't been there, I might be dead. 1 month, I said finally. 1 month, and then this arrangement ends. You deal with your Volkov problem, I heal, and we go back to our separate lives. 1 month, he agreed. But something in his expression suggested he didn't believe that's how this would end, any more than I did. Chapter 4. The Arrangement. The estate was larger than I had initially realized. From my bedroom window, I could see manicured gardens, a pool house, what looked like a separate guest cottage, and walls that surrounded the entire property like a fortress. I spent the first day exploring while Dante dealt with business that he assured me had nothing to do with anything illegal. I wasn't naive enough to believe him entirely, but I also wasn't ready to confront the moral implications of staying in the home of a man who almost certainly ran a criminal organization, one crisis at a time. Dr. Alessio returned that evening to check my stitches and bring me a prescription for pain medication. She also brought clothes, several outfits in exactly my size, from designers I recognized but could never afford on a federal judge's salary. How did you know my size? I asked Dante when I found him later in what he called his study. It was a masculine space, all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves that held volumes in English, Italian, and what looked like Latin. I have people who are good at obtaining information. You mean you had someone break into my apartment? I mean, I had someone purchase clothes that would fit you based on observation. He looked up from the papers he had been reviewing, though I did have your apartment secured after the attack. New locks, updated security system, cameras. You'll find the details in a folder on your nightstand. You had no right to do that. I had every right to make sure your home was safe before you eventually returned to it. He set down his pen and gave me his full attention. I'm not your enemy, Simone. The sooner you accept that, the easier this month will be for both of us. I wanted to argue, but I was tired, and my face hurt, and the pain medication was making everything feel slightly surreal. Why are you doing this? I asked instead. Really, not the pretty speech about protection and responsibility. What do you actually want from me? He was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those dark eyes that seemed to see more than I wanted them to. Honestly, I don't entirely know. He stood and walked to a cabinet, pouring 2 glasses of something amber. He offered one to me. I know that watching you in that courtroom changed something in me. I know that when I heard you had been hurt, I felt something I haven't felt in a very long time. What? Fear. He took a sip of his drink, never breaking eye contact. Real, genuine fear that something might happen to you before I had the chance to know you beyond the bench. That's not a good enough reason to upend my entire life. No, but it's an honest one. He moved closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and subtle. I'm not a good man, Simone. I won't pretend otherwise. I've done things that would horrify you, made choices that probably should have landed me in prison, but I'm also not the monster the prosecution painted me as. I have rules, lines I don't cross, and I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Not yet. The words hung between us, full of promise and threat in equal measure. But I'm a patient man, Judge Crawford, and I think, given time, you'll discover that we're not as different as you want to believe. We're completely different. I uphold the law, you break it. You uphold a system created by men who break their own rules when it suits them. I operate in the spaces that system leaves behind, providing services and protection to people who can't rely on official channels. He set down his glass. We both deal in justice, Simone. We just have different definitions of what that means. It was dangerous thinking, the kind of moral relativism that eroded everything I believed in. But there was also truth in what he said. Uncomfortable truth about the system I served. I need to make some calls, I said, changing the subject. Before I said something I couldn't take back. My family will be worried. My friends, your mother and sister have been told you're taking a brief vacation for your health after a minor accident. Your best friend Angela was more suspicious, but she accepted the explanation when your clerk confirmed it. He pulled out my phone, which had apparently been fully charged and ready. You're free to call anyone you want, but I would ask that you not reveal your location. For your safety and theirs. You've thought of everything. It's what I do. I took the phone and left the study, needing space from Dante, and the way he seemed to fill every room he occupied. I called my mother first, reassured her that I was fine, that yes, the accident had been minor, that no, she didn't need to fly to Chicago. Then I called Angela, my college roommate and closest friend, who was decidedly less easy to convince. Simone Crawford, don't you dare lie to me. What really happened? I had a minor incident. Nothing serious. I just need some time away from work to decompress. You've never taken time off for anything in your life. When you had the flu last year, you teleconferenced into court from your deathbed. So I'll ask again, what really happened? I looked around the guest cottage where I had gone to make the call, ensuring I was truly alone. I can't give you details, Angie. Not right now, but I promise I'm safe, and I'll tell you everything when I can. There was a long pause. Are you in trouble? I'm in a complicated situation that I'm handling. Does this have anything to do with that Mafia trial from a few months ago? The ridiculously hot defendant you definitely noticed even though you pretended you didn't? I never... Girl, please. I watched the news coverage. I saw the way you looked at him during sentencing. And I saw the way he looked at you. Another pause. Is he involved in whatever this is? Angie, you don't have to tell me. Just promise me you're actually safe and not being coerced or threatened or whatever happens in those crime novels you pretend you don't read. Despite everything. I laughed. I promise I'm safe. Probably safer than I've ever been, actually. And I'll explain everything when I can. I'm holding you to that. And Simone, be careful. Men like that, the dangerous ones with the pretty faces and the complicated lives, they're addictive. You know that, right? I know. What I didn't say was that I was already discovering just how addictive Dante Moretti could be. Chapter 5. Learning to live. The days developed a strange rhythm. Mornings were mine. I would wake early, work out in the estate's private gym, then spend time reading legal briefs on my laptop or simply sitting in the garden with coffee. Dante seemed to understand my need for space, and he never intruded on these quiet hours. Afternoons were for recovery. Dr. Alessio came every other day to check my stitches and monitor my concussion symptoms. The rest of the time, I explored the estate, swam in the pool, or sat in the library reading books from Dante's extensive collection. Evenings were when things got complicated. That was when Dante would finish his business for the day and find me wherever I was hiding. We'd have dinner together, sometimes formal in the dining room, other times casual on the patio, and we'd talk. God, we talked about everything. His childhood in Sicily, my growing up in Southside Chicago, his complicated relationship with his father, my idolization of mine, his love of classical music, my secret passion for terrible reality television, his fluency in 4 languages, my ongoing struggle to remember the Italian phrases he patiently taught me. Sei bella, he said one evening, about a week into my stay. We were sitting by the pool, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. What does that mean? It means you're beautiful. He said it simply, as if commenting on the weather rather than making my heart skip several beats. I have 8 stitches on my face. Yes, and you're still the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. He turned to look at me, his expression serious. The scar will fade. But even if it doesn't, even if it stays exactly as it is now, you would still be beautiful, Simone. Because beauty isn't about perfect skin. It's about character and strength, and the light in someone's eyes when they're passionate about something. What am I passionate about? I asked, genuinely curious how he would answer. Justice. Real justice. Not just legal technicalities. I've seen it in your eyes every time we talk about your work. You don't just want to enforce the law, you want to make things better for people who have been failed by the system. He smiled. You and I aren't so different in that regard. We're very different. Are we? You fight for justice within the system. I fight for it outside the system. But we both fight. It was seductive, the way he framed things, the way he made his life seem like a mirror of mine, just slightly tilted. I knew I should resist it, should maintain the bright line between right and wrong, legal and illegal, us and them. But that line was getting blurrier every day. 2 weeks in, I came downstairs one morning to find an easel set up in the sunroom, along with paints, brushes, and canvases. What's this? I asked Dante, who was drinking espresso and reading an Italian newspaper at the table. Your clerk mentioned you used to paint, that you minored in art history in college but gave it up to focus on law school. I had forgotten I'd told Melissa that during one of our rare personal conversations. I haven't painted in almost 10 years. Then perhaps it's time to start again. He set down his paper. You've been restless, Simone. I can see it. You miss work, miss the structure and purpose it gives you. But this month is supposed to be about healing, not just physically. Maybe painting could be part of that. I wanted to dismiss it as presumptuous, as Dante making decisions about my life without consulting me. But the truth was, I had been restless, and I had missed painting, missed the meditative quality of mixing colors and applying them to canvas, creating something from nothing. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me yet. You might discover you're terrible and hate me for reminding you of that fact. I wasn't terrible. As I stood in front of that easel later that day, brush in hand, muscle memory took over. The movements came back naturally. The way to hold the brush, how to blend colors on the palette, the satisfaction of watching a blank canvas slowly transform into something meaningful. I painted for hours, losing track of time completely. When I finally stepped back to assess what I'd created, I was surprised to find I had painted the view from my bedroom window, the gardens in full bloom, the guest cottage in the distance, the high walls that surrounded everything. It should have felt like a prison portrait, those walls. Instead, it felt like sanctuary. It's beautiful. Dante's voice came from behind me. I hadn't heard him enter, too absorbed in my work. It's rough. I'm out of practice. It's honest. That's better than technically perfect. He moved to stand beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. You captured something I never noticed before. What's that? The way the light hits the walls, the way they don't look oppressive from the inside, the way they look protective. He glanced at me. Is that how you see them now? As protection rather than prison? I don't know what I see anymore, I admitted. This whole situation, being here with you, it's made everything complicated in ways I never expected. Complicated can be good. Complicated can be dangerous. Also true. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair. Behind my ear, his fingers barely grazing, my healed cheek. But sometimes the dangerous choice is the right one. I should have stepped back. Should have reminded him about boundaries and appropriate distance and the 100 reasons why whatever was happening between us was a terrible idea. Instead, I leaned into his touch, just slightly. Just enough to acknowledge that I felt it too, this pull, this connection, this thing that was growing stronger every day despite all the reasons it shouldn't. Simone, he said softly, my name on his lips like a prayer. Don't. The word came out barely above a whisper. Don't say whatever you're about to say. Not yet. I'm not ready. When will you be ready? I don't know. I finally looked up at him, meeting those dark eyes that had haunted my thoughts for months. Maybe never. Maybe tomorrow. I just know that if we cross certain lines now, I won't be able to think clearly about any of this. And I need to think clearly. Then I'll wait. He dropped his hand but didn't move away. But Simone, you should know I'm not a patient man by nature. I've been patient only because you're worth waiting for, but that patience has limits. Is that a threat? It's a promise. When you're ready, when you finally admit to yourself what's been building between us since the first day you walked into that courtroom, I won't let you hide from it. I won't let you pretend it doesn't exist. And I won't settle for halfway. What if I'm never ready? He smiled, but there was heat in it, promise in it. You will be. Because you feel this just as much as I do, Judge Crawford. And you're not a woman who runs from the truth, no matter how inconvenient it might be. Then he left me alone with my painting and my tangled thoughts, neither of which provided any answers to the questions I wasn't ready to ask. Chapter 6. Crossing Lines. The attack came 3 weeks into my stay, and it came from inside. I was in the library late at night, unable to sleep, reading a novel that Dante had recommended. The house was quiet, most of the staff gone for the evening, Dante working in his study on the other side of the building. I heard the window break before I saw the intruder. Glass exploded inward, and a man in black came through with practiced efficiency. He had a gun, and it was pointed directly at me before I could even think to scream. Judge Crawford. His accent was thick, Russian. The Volkov family sends their regards. I didn't think, didn't plan, just grabbed the heavy book I'd been reading and threw it at his face as hard as I could. It hit, and he staggered back, giving me precious seconds to run. I made it to the hallway before I heard the gunshot. The bullet hit the doorframe inches from my head, and then suddenly Dante was there, appearing from nowhere, pushing me behind him. What happened next was brutal and efficient. Dante moved like violence personified, disarming the intruder with a series of moves that looked more like dance than combat. Within 30 seconds, the man was on the ground, Dante's knee on his back, Dante's gun at the back of his head. How many? Dante demanded, his voice cold enough to freeze blood. Just me. The Volkovs wanted to send a message. They sent you to die. Dante's finger tightened on the trigger, and I knew with absolute certainty that he was going to kill this man right here in his library. Don't. The word came out before I could stop it. Dante didn't look at me. He came here to kill you, Simone. I know. But you don't need to kill him. Yes, I do. Because if I let him live, others will think they can try the same thing. The only message that matters in my world is the one written in blood. Please. I moved closer, ignoring the rational part of my brain that screamed I should be running, calling the police, doing anything but standing here begging a Mafia boss to show mercy. Please don't make me watch you kill someone. Not like this. Not when I stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Not when you what? He finally looked at me, and the coldness in his eyes made me shiver. Not when I care what happens to you. The admission cost me, but it was true. Somehow, in 3 weeks, I had gone from seeing Dante as a dangerous criminal to seeing him as a complicated man I was falling for, and I knew, with sickening certainty, that watching him kill someone would change that, would change us. For a long moment, Dante didn't move. Then, slowly, he stood, keeping his gun trained on the intruder. Marco, he called. Get this garbage out of my house. Make sure the Volkovs understand that the next one won't be sent back alive. 2 men I recognized as part of Dante's security team appeared and dragged the Russian away. Once we were alone, Dante turned to me, and the coldness was gone, replaced by something raw and furious. You could have been killed, he said, his voice shaking. If I had been 30 seconds later, if you hadn't thrown that book, if anything had gone even slightly different, you would be dead right now. But I'm not. I'm fine. You're not fine. He grabbed my arms, not rough but intense, desperate. You're shaking. You're pale. You just nearly died for the 2nd time in a month, and both times it was because of me. No, both times it was because of the Volkovs. Who targeted you because of your connection to me? He released me and stepped back, running his hands through his hair. This was a mistake. All of it. I should never have brought you here. Should never have convinced you to stay. I thought I could protect you, but clearly, I can't. They got through my security, into my home, within feet of you. Dante. No. Listen to me. He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I had never expected to see from him. Fear. I've been lying to myself, telling myself that I could keep you safe, that a month would be enough to eliminate the threat, that you could go back to your normal life after this. But the truth is, you'll never be truly safe, as long as the Volkovs see you as leverage against me. And they'll always see you that way because He stopped, jaw clenching. Because you what? Because I'm in love with you. The words exploded out of him like a confession torn from unwilling lips. I've been in love with you since I watched you in that courtroom, so focused and brilliant and completely beyond my reach. I've been in love with you through every dinner, every conversation, every moment you've been in this house. And that love is what's going to get you killed unless I do something drastic to end this. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process the fact that Dante Moretti had just confessed to loving me in the same breath as telling me I couldn't stay. What are you saying? I'm saying that tomorrow, I'm putting you on a plane to Seattle. My cousin owns a company there, legitimate business, no connections to anything illegal. You'll have a new identity, a new job, a new life. The Volkovs will think you disappeared. And after a few months, they'll move on to other targets. You want me to give up everything? My career, my family, my entire life? I want you alive. His voice cracked. I want you safe and happy and living the life you deserve, even if that life doesn't include me, because keeping you here, pretending this can work, is selfish and dangerous, and I won't risk you anymore. You don't get to make that choice for me. I moved closer to him, anger cutting through my shock. You don't get to decide what I give up or keep. That's my choice, Dante. Mine. Then choose to live. Choose to be safe. What if I choose you? The words hung between us, massive and irreversible. Dante stared at me, like I had just spoken, in a language he didn't understand. You can't, he said finally. Simone, you're a federal judge. I'm a criminal. There's no world where that works. Then maybe I don't want to be a federal judge anymore. The words shocked me as much as they shocked him. Maybe the last month has taught me that the life I built, the career I thought defined me, maybe it's not actually what I want anymore. You're in shock. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. I grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer, making him look at me. You were right before, about us not being that different, about me fighting for justice inside a broken system. I've spent 10 years enforcing laws that don't always serve justice, working within structures that protect the powerful and abandon the vulnerable. Maybe it's time I found a different way to make a difference. By staying with a mafia boss? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Simone, listen to yourself. You're suggesting throwing away everything you've worked for because of what? Some feelings that developed under extreme circumstances? These aren't just feelings. This is... I stopped, searching for words adequate to describe what I felt. You said you've been in love with me since the courtroom. Well, I've been drawn to you just as long, fighting it, denying it, telling myself it was inappropriate or wrong or impossible. But it's there, Dante. This thing between us, it's real, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. Simone. He raised his hands to cup my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones with devastating gentleness. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. You make me want to be better, to do better, to build something worth offering you. But I can't let you sacrifice your entire life for that. What if it's not a sacrifice? What if it's a choice? I covered his hands with mine. I'm not naive. I know what you are, what you do. I know that staying with you means accepting things I've spent my career fighting against. But I also know that leaving you, going back to a life that feels empty and meaningless, would be the real sacrifice. The Volkovs will keep coming. Then we'll handle them. Together. You could be hurt again. Worse than before. Life doesn't come with safety guarantees, Dante. I could get hit by a car tomorrow crossing the street to the courthouse. The only real question is whether the risk is worth what we gain. And you think I'm worth the risk? I think you're worth everything. He kissed me then, finally, desperately, like a man who had been holding his breath for months and finally found air. His lips were soft but insistent, his hands in my hair, my body pressed against his like we could merge into one person if we just got close enough. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. This is insane, he whispered. I know. You'll regret it. Maybe. But I'll regret leaving more. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. I smiled against his mouth. So what do we do now? Now? He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. Now we stop pretending this is temporary. We stop pretending you're just a guest in my home and I'm just protecting you out of obligation. We stop pretending that what we feel isn't real or possible or worth fighting for. And the practical considerations? My career, my reputation, my life outside these walls? We'll figure it out. Together. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. But Simone, I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. Being with me means living in my world, at least partially. It means accepting that I'll always have enemies, that security will always be necessary, that some aspects of my business you'll never want to know about. Can you live with that? I thought about it seriously, about the judge I had been, the person I thought I was supposed to be, about the rules and structures that had governed my life, about the line between legal and illegal that I had always believed was absolute. Then, I thought about Dante, about the man I had discovered beneath, the reputation, about the way he looked at me like I was precious, the way he challenged me intellectually, the way he made me feel alive in ways I hadn't felt in years. I can live with it, I said. But Dante, I need something from you too. Anything. I need you to be honest with me. Always. About your business, about the risks, about everything. I can accept a lot, but I can't accept lies. No lies. I promise you that. And I need you to let me contribute. To use my skills, my knowledge, to be a partner in this rather than just someone you protect. I'm not a decoration or a damsel. I'm an intelligent, capable woman, and I need to be treated as such. He smiled, and it was genuine, full of admiration. Judge Crawford, you've been negotiating terms like you're presiding over a settlement conference. I'm protecting my interests and establishing clear expectations. It's what I do. It's one of the many reasons I love you. He kissed me again, softer this time. You have a deal, Simone. Honesty, partnership, and respect for your capabilities. Anything else? Just one thing. Stop calling me Judge Crawford. What should I call you? How about your wife? The question hung in the air, outrageous and perfect. Dante's eyes widened, then narrowed with understanding. Are you proposing to me, Simone Crawford? I'm suggesting a practical solution. If we're going to do this, if I'm going to stay in your world, we might as well do it properly. Marriage means protection, legal rights, partnership. It sends a message to your enemies that I'm not just a girlfriend they can use as leverage. I'm family, untouchable. You've thought about this. I've been thinking about a lot of things these past 3 weeks, including how to make this work in a way that protects both of us. I took his hands. Dante, I'm not asking because I expect some grand romance or fairy tale ending. I'm asking because it's the strategic move that gives us both what we need. Me, a place in your world that's defined and protected. And you, the woman you claim to love, fully committed to staying. You're proposing a marriage of convenience. I'm proposing a marriage of choice. We choose each other, fully aware of all the complications. We choose to build something together despite all the reasons it shouldn't work. And we make it legal, binding, real. For a long moment, Dante just looked at me. Then he laughed, and it was the most genuine sound I had heard from him. You're extraordinary. Do you know that? Most women would want romance and declarations and some elaborate proposal. You want a strategic partnership with legal protections. I'm a former judge. I think in terms of law and rights and structures. I smiled. But if you want romance, you should know that I do actually love you. Not just as a strategic partner, but as a man who makes my heart race and my mind engage and my life feel purposeful in new ways. So yes, it's practical. But it's also real. Then yes. He dropped to one knee right there in the library where someone had just tried to kill me, still holding my hands, looking up at me with eyes full of love and mischief. Simone Crawford, former federal judge and current love of my life. Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my days proving that choosing me was the best decision you ever made? Yes. The word was simple, but it carried the weight of every choice I was making, every bridge I was burning, every new path I was choosing. But Dante, yes. Stand up. You're getting blood on your knees from the broken glass. He laughed again and stood, pulling me into his arms. Ever practical. Someone has to be. You lead with your heart. I'll lead with my head. Together, we might actually survive this. We'll do more than survive. He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. We'll thrive, Simone. You and me, partners in everything. Chapter 7. The Wedding. We were married 5 days later in a private ceremony at the estate. Dr. Alessio stood as my witness, Dante's cousin Marco as his. A Catholic priest who had known Dante's family for generations performed the ceremony in Italian and English, his blessing given without judgment or question. I wore a simple white dress that Maria, Dante's sister, who I had finally met, helped me choose. No veil, no elaborate train, just elegant silk that made me feel beautiful and powerful in equal measure. Dante wore a black suit, tailored perfectly, with a white rose in his lapel that matched the bouquet I carried. He looked at me like I was the answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking. The ceremony was short, traditional, binding. We exchanged vows, his in Italian, mine in English, both of us promising loyalty, honesty, partnership. He slipped a ring on my finger, platinum with diamonds, elegant and substantial. When the priest announced us as husband and wife, Dante kissed me like we were the only two people in the world. The reception was more elaborate. Dante had invited what he called his family, which turned out to be about 50 people, some actual relatives, others business associates, all of them loyal to him in ways that went beyond mere employment. They welcomed me without reservation, these men and women who lived in Dante's world. They congratulated us, shared stories about Dante I had never heard, treated me like I had always belonged among them. "You make him happy," Marco told me during dinner. Wine flowing freely, laughter filling the evening air. I've known Dante his whole life, and I've never seen him like this. Lighter, more human. He makes me happy too. Good, because if you hurt him, I'll have to kill you. He said it with a smile, but I saw the seriousness beneath. He's my family, and now so are you. I understand. And I did. This world had rules just as the legal world did. Different rules, maybe harder ones, but clear nonetheless. Loyalty above all. Family over everything. Protection as the highest form of love. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the staff had cleaned up, Dante and I stood alone on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The moon was full, casting silver light over everything, making the world look like a dream. "Any regrets?" he asked, his arm around my waist, holding me close. "None. You? Only that I didn't do this months ago, that I wasted time pretending I could let you go. We needed that time. I needed to choose this with clear eyes, not just react to circumstances. And now? Are your eyes clear?" "Perfectly." I turned to face him. "I know what you are, Dante. I know what I've become by choosing you. I've crossed lines I swore I never would. But I also know that I'd rather be here with you, living honestly in this complicated world, than back in the courthouse, pretending to serve justice while the system fails the people who need it most. You could still make a difference. Use your legal knowledge, your connections. There are ways to help people from inside my organization. Legitimate ways. I've been thinking about that. Maybe I could consult on legal matters for your various businesses. Help keep things as legitimate as possible. Use my expertise to protect people rather than prosecute them." "You'd do that? Why not?" "The skills are the same. The application is just different." I smiled. "Besides, you promised me honesty and partnership. I'm taking you up on that offer. You never stop negotiating, do you?" "Never. It's who I am. It's one of the many reasons I love you." He kissed me, soft and slow, with all the time in the world. "Come to bed, Mrs. Moretti. We have the rest of our lives to figure out the details." Mrs. Moretti. The name should have felt strange, wrong, like wearing someone else's identity. Instead, it felt right in a way Judge Crawford never quite had. We went upstairs to the master bedroom that was now officially ours. Dante carried me over the threshold like the tradition demanded, making me laugh at the absurdity of a mafia boss being traditional. What happened next was both tender and intense, gentle and passionate, everything a wedding night should be. Dante loved me like I was precious, like I was powerful, like I was exactly who I was supposed to be. And I loved him back the same way. Afterward, lying in his arms with the moonlight streaming through the windows, I felt peace for the first time in years. Not the rigid, controlled peace of my old life, where everything was managed and scheduled and proper, but real peace. The kind that comes from being fully yourself with someone who sees all of you and loves you anyway. "I never thought I could have this," Dante murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on my skin. "This kind of happiness, this kind of love. Men like me, we don't usually get the happy ending. Maybe that's because you've been looking for the wrong kind of ending. Not all happy endings look the same. What does ours look like? Complicated, challenging, probably occasionally terrifying." I smiled against his chest. "But real, honest, worth fighting for. I can live with that." "Good, because you're stuck with me now. Till death do us part and all that." "Till death and beyond," he said. "In this world and whatever comes after, you're mine, Simone. And I'm yours. Such a romantic. Only for you." He tilted my chin up to kiss me again. "Only ever for you." Chapter 8. New Beginnings. The Volkov situation resolved itself 2 weeks after our wedding, though resolved was probably too gentle a word for what actually happened. Dante sat me down one morning and explained that he had reached an agreement with the Volkov family. The details were vague, deliberately so. But the outcome was clear: they would no longer target me, and in exchange, Dante had offered concessions in territory and business arrangements that apparently satisfied their honor. I didn't ask what those concessions cost him. Some things I was better off not knowing. What I did know was that I was free to leave the estate without an army of bodyguards, free to make phone calls without looking over my shoulder, free to start building the new life I had chosen. The first step was officially resigning from my judgeship. I wrote the letter myself, carefully worded, citing personal reasons and a desire to pursue private legal consultation. The chief judge called me personally, concerned, asking if I was sure if everything was all right. I assured him I was fine, better than fine, starting a new chapter. The legal community was shocked. Articles appeared in law journals speculating about my sudden departure. Some suggested burnout, others health issues. A few more perceptive ones noted the timing relative to the Moretti trial and drew their own conclusions. I ignored all of it. Their speculation didn't matter anymore. Instead, I threw myself into building something new. Dante had been serious about putting my legal expertise to use, and I discovered there was enormous need for legitimate legal counsel in his world. Business contracts, property acquisitions, employment law, all the mundane aspects of running an organization that happened to have some less savory elements alongside the legal ones. I drew clear lines. I wouldn't touch anything directly related to illegal activities, wouldn't help cover up crimes or facilitate law-breaking, but I would help keep the legitimate aspects of Dante's businesses actually legitimate, would protect his employees' rights, would ensure contracts were fair and enforceable. It was satisfying work, using my skills to help people who typically couldn't afford high-quality legal representation. The restaurant workers, the construction crews, the various people who depended on Dante's organization for their livelihoods. They deserved legal protection just as much as anyone else. 6 months into our marriage, I started a consulting firm specializing in employment law for service industries. Dante provided the startup capital, but I ran it independently, building a client base that extended beyond his organizations. It was legitimate, profitable, and purposeful, everything I needed. Angela was the first person from my old life that I told the whole truth to. She came to visit 8 months after the wedding, and I finally explained everything. The attack, Dante's protection, how I had fallen in love with a man I was supposed to see as a criminal. "I should be judging you right now," she said, sitting in the garden with wine and watching the sunset. "I should be telling you that you've lost your mind, that you've thrown away everything you worked for. But you're not. But I'm not," she smiled. "Because I've been watching you today, Simone. And I've never seen you this happy, this at peace. You were always so tightly wound before, so controlled, like you were afraid that one moment of loosening up would make everything fall apart." I was. I thought control was the same as strength. And now? Now I know that real strength is being flexible enough to change when your life demands it, is being honest enough to admit when the path you're on isn't actually where you want to go. And you're happy? Really, truly happy? I thought about Dante, about our morning routines and evening conversations, about the way he challenged me intellectually while supporting me emotionally, about the life we were building together despite all its complications. "Really, truly happy," I confirmed. "It's not the life I planned, but it's the life I choose every single day." Angela stayed for a week, and by the time she left, she and Dante had developed a tentative friendship based on mutual respect and shared devotion to my well-being. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. My family was harder. My mother struggled to understand why I had left my position, why I had married someone she had only met at a rushed wedding, why I seemed to have upended my entire carefully planned life. But gradually, as she saw how Dante treated me, how he clearly adored me, how we worked together as genuine partners, she began to soften. It helped that Dante charmed her shamelessly, learning to cook her favorite dishes, asking about her life with genuine interest, treating her with the kind of old-fashioned respect that her generation appreciated. "He's not what I would have chosen for you," she told me one Sunday afternoon at a family dinner. "But I can see that he makes you happy. And in the end, that's what matters most." It was acceptance, if not complete understanding. I'd take it. Chapter 9. Full circle. A year after our wedding, I found myself in a courtroom again. Not as a judge this time, but as an attorney representing one of Dante's restaurant employees in a discrimination lawsuit against a former employer. It was a small case, the kind that it wouldn't make headlines, but it mattered to Maria Gonzalez, the woman I was representing. The opposing counsel was someone I had known from my time as a prosecutor. He did a double take when he saw me at the plaintiff's table. "Simone Crawford? I heard you'd left the bench, but I didn't expect to see you on this side of the courtroom." "Life takes unexpected turns," I said pleasantly. "And it's Simone Moretti now." His eyes widened. "You married?" "Yes." I cut him off before he could say something inappropriate. "And I'm here to win this case for my client, so shall we focus on that?" The trial was exactly what I needed. Using my legal skills, my courtroom experience, my understanding of the system to fight for someone who had been genuinely wronged. Maria had been fired for reporting sexual harassment, and her former employer thought they could bully her into silence. They were wrong. I built an airtight case, documented everything, presented evidence methodically, made arguments that were both legally sound and emotionally compelling. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a verdict in Maria's favor, with damages that would make other employers think twice about retaliating against workers who spoke up. "Thank you," Maria said afterward, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't think anyone would believe me. Didn't think I could win against them." "You deserve justice," I told her. "And you fought for it." "I just helped present the evidence." Dante was waiting outside the courthouse, leaning against his car with a smile on his face. "How did it go?" he asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. "We won. Full damages plus punitive penalties." "Of course you did. You're brilliant." He pulled me close, kissing me right there on the courthouse steps where anyone could see. "I'm proud of you. For doing my job, for finding a new way to make a difference, for using everything you learned as a judge to help people who actually need it." He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "For being brave enough to walk away from one life and build another." I had help, and a very compelling reason to take the risk. "Oh, and what was that?" "Some dangerous Italian Mafia boss who made me an offer I couldn't refuse." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "That's a terrible Godfather reference. I'm new to this whole Mafia wife thing. Give me time to work on my material. You have the rest of our lives." We drove home together. Home being the estate that no longer felt like a prison or a safe house, but simply the place where we lived and loved and built our future together. That evening, I found myself in my study. Dante had given me an entire wing of the house to convert into my legal office, reviewing case files for new clients. My consulting firm had grown beyond my expectations, and I was considering hiring an associate to help with the workload. Dante appeared in the doorway, with 2 glasses of wine. "You're working late again," says the man who was on the phone with suppliers until 9:30. I accepted the wine gratefully. We're both terrible at work-life balance. We balance each other. He settled into the chair across from my desk, the same position he had occupied so many times before. "Simone, there's something I want to ask you." "That sounds ominous." "It's not. It's just important." He set down his glass and leaned forward. "You've been happy this past year, haven't you?" "Incredibly happy. You know that." "And you don't regret leaving the bench? Don't miss the power and prestige?" I thought about it honestly. Sometimes I miss the structure, the clear sense of purpose. But no, I don't regret it. This life we've built, it's messy and complicated and sometimes morally ambiguous. But it's real. And it's mine. Ours. That's worth more than all the prestige in the world. I'm glad, because I want to build something more with you. Something bigger. What do you mean? A foundation. Legal assistance for working-class people who can't afford representation. Job training programs for people leaving prison. Support systems for families affected by the justice system. He was animated now, eyes bright with vision. "You've shown me this past year that we can use our resources to make actual change, not just operate in the shadows. I want to do more of that. With you." "Dante, that would be..." I stopped, overwhelmed by the implications. "That would be incredible, but it would also be public. People would ask questions about funding, about who we are, about how a former federal judge ended up running a foundation with a man who was once on trial for racketeering. Let them ask. We'll be honest about what we can be honest about and strategic about the rest." He took my hands. "Simone, I've spent my life operating in the shadows, building power through secrecy and fear. But you've taught me there's another way. A way to use influence openly, to create something that helps people rather than just protecting territory. I want to try that. With you. You're serious about this." "Completely. I've already talked to accountants and lawyers. We can structure it properly, keep everything legitimate, make real change in ways that don't compromise either of our positions." "Good." I looked at my husband, This man who had once seemed like the embodiment of everything I opposed, and saw someone who had been transformed by love just as much as I had been. Someone who wanted to be better, do better, build something meaningful. Okay, I said. Let's do it. Let's build something extraordinary together. You mean it? I mean it. On one condition. Name it. We call it the Crawford Moretti Foundation. Both our names. Equal partners in everything. His smile could have lit up the entire city. Deal. Though people will definitely have questions about why a Crawford and a Moretti are working together. Let them wonder. We know the truth. And what's that? That sometimes the most unlikely partnerships create the most meaningful change. That sometimes love means choosing a different path than the one you planned. That sometimes the person you think is your opposite turns out to be your perfect match. You've become quite the romantic, Judge Crawford. Mrs. Moretti, I corrected. And I learned from the best. Epilogue. 3 years after our wedding, I stood in the grand opening of the Crawford Moretti Community Justice Center, watching hundreds of people stream through doors that represented everything we had built together. Legal aid offices where people could get free consultation, job training programs that had placed over 200 formerly incarcerated individuals in good positions, support groups for families affected by the justice system, educational programs for youth in underserved communities. It was everything I had dreamed of accomplishing as a judge, realized in a way that would never have been possible within the constraints of the system. Penny for your thoughts, Dante said, appearing at my elbow with our 3-month-old daughter in his arms. Elena Rose Moretti had her father's dark eyes and my complexion, a perfect blend of both of us. She was sleeping peacefully despite the noise and chaos around her. I was thinking about how strange life is, I admitted, reaching out to stroke our daughter's soft cheek. 3 years ago, I was Judge Crawford, convinced I had my life perfectly planned out. Now I'm Simone Moretti, married to a man I once presided over in court, with a daughter and a foundation and a life that looks nothing like what I imagined. Do you miss it? Your old life? Not even a little. I looked up at him. This man who had changed everything, who continued to surprise me every day with his capacity for growth and love. This is better. Messy and complicated, but real in a way nothing else ever was. I love you, he said simply. Thank you for choosing this life. For choosing me. Thank you for being worth choosing. Marco approached with his wife and their new baby. Congratulations flowing freely. My mother arrived with my sister, both of them cooing over Elena. Angela showed up with her fiancé, excited to give us a tour of the facilities. As the afternoon wore on, I watched the community center fill with people, former clients, current clients, colleagues from both my old life and my new one, members of Dante's family, and countless others whose lives had been touched by the work we were doing. This was legacy. Not the kind I had imagined building as a federal judge, but something more meaningful, more personal, more real. That evening, after the guests had gone and Elena was asleep in her nursery, Dante and I stood on our terrace watching the sun set over the city. Any regrets? He asked. The same question he had asked on our wedding night. None. You? Only that I can't. Go back and thank the Volkovs for attacking you that night. Dante! I swatted his arm. That's a terrible thing to say. But true. If they hadn't targeted you, if I hadn't been able to protect you, if you hadn't ended up at the estate, we wouldn't have any of this. Elena wouldn't exist. The foundation wouldn't exist. This life we've built wouldn't exist. I suppose that's one way to look at it, though I could have done without the knife to the face. He traced the faint scar on my cheek, barely visible now but still there. This scar represents the moment everything changed, the moment I stopped pretending I could let you go. And when did you know? That I felt the same way? The night you asked me not to kill that Russian intruder. You said, not when I care what happens to you. That was the moment I knew you were mine. I was yours long before that. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. And now? Now I'm exactly where I want to be. With exactly who I want to be. With... I turned in his arms to face him. She was the judge at his trial, but he made her his wife instead, and it turned out to be the best decision either of us ever made. That would make a good title for a story. Our story. The one we're still writing. And what happens next in our story, Mrs. Moretti? I smiled up at my husband, this dangerous, complicated, wonderful man who had changed my life completely. Whatever we decide. Together. Always together. Always together, he agreed. And then he kissed me as the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, beautiful and warm and full of promise. We had started in a courtroom, with me in judgment and him as the defendant. But we had become something else entirely. Partners, lovers, spouses, parents, builders of something meaningful and lasting. The path from Judge Crawford to Simone Moretti had been unexpected, complicated, sometimes terrifying. But it had led me here, to this moment, to this man, to this life. And I wouldn't change a single moment of it.